There we go. Yeah, so as I was saying, a lot of this webinar will be based off of my personal experiences, as well as teachings from my mentor, Kat, CEO of PMP, along with other maestros that I've worked with in the past with ayahuasca and plant medicines. I have Hilario, Don Moises, I have Bree. I've worked with a teacher named Sabina. So a lot of them have really given me the gift of knowing how to work with plants, how to work with energy. And again, I'm just very grateful and honored to share some of my teachings with you all today. This webinar is really going to be based off of safety, a little bit of integration, and really open to anyone who wants to deepen their connection with magic mushrooms, is maybe curious about having a relationship with magic mushrooms, or perhaps you already have some experience and just want to know what it means to create a sacred relationship through a shamanic perspective. So it's really open to anyone and everyone. The purpose of this webinar is to really highlight safety, how to really make sure that you're creating a safe container for yourself if you choose to journey solo, or if you choose to have someone facilitate for you. What pieces will you need to know in order for your facilitator to feel safe to you? So we'll definitely dive into that and different areas of safety as well. But I kind of want to go a little bit back into who I am. For those of you who don't know, I am one of the integration coaches of PMP. I've been working with PMP for a couple years now. And again, I've worked with Kat way before these last 2 years. She's been a big piece of my journey. I started working with ayahuasca as my main plant medicine, and really just felt the call to connect with her as my first psychedelic ever, to connect to my ancestral roots. I do have Peruvian ancestry in me. I was born in Denver, but both parents Peruvian. And I was in a place where I was dealing with a lot of depression, anxiety, eating disorder, and just felt called to learn from the medicines, from the ways that my ancestors worked with the medicines and how they healed. So in my journey, I deeply connected with ayahuasca, and I apprenticed for a few years. And during my apprenticeship, I also developed beautiful relationships with other plants. With my dietas, I've gone to the jungle. I opened myself up to learn more from cacao and rapé, from tobacco, mapacho. And then later on found myself working with magic mushrooms. So I never really saw myself working with magic mushrooms, but I truly like to thank ayahuasca as her guidance leading me to magic mushrooms to help me understand what it means to learn how to sit with your depression, with your anxiety, not necessarily try to fix or change it or heal it, but to really learn how to alchemize it and work with it and not against it, and really understand why I was feeling so anxious. And magic mushrooms was the medicine that really helped me sit with that, with the discomfort of anxiety, with the discomfort of depression, and really helped me learn to have a better perspective around it. Also helped me just have better clarity around my path, supported me on my journey when I lost my father a few years ago. So really taught me how to work with grief as well. So I love magic mushrooms, psilocybin. You might hear me call them los niños at one point as well. I call them many things, but they have been definitely a catalyst for me pushing forward on my path, especially as someone who really feels called to be of service of the plants, but also medicines like magic mushrooms. So I hope you all can learn from, again, my personal experience and just what I've been taught along the way. It's an honor to have you all here. I'm very, very grateful to have you all here. I'm going to talk a little bit about the agenda of the webinar. So it will be a little bit about the historical context of from what I know, what I've been taught, and then we'll talk a little bit more about psilocybin and magic mushrooms as a spirit, as a sacred teacher, So I'll dive into the benefits, how they work with the brain, how they work with our psyche, and how they can also enhance our spirituality as well. And that will be very much rooted in a shamanic lens. I'll have a little bit of, some scientific facts, but yeah, I will mostly talk about them as a spirit. So after that, we'll dive into the safe use and responsible use of magic mushrooms. And I've kind of divided that up into a few different categories. We have the psychological, we have the physical, and when I say physical, I mean more of like the body, environmental, the spiritual. And in each category, there definitely will be some few subcategories. So bear with me in that, but there's definitely a lot of good stuff there. I will have to keep it relatively short since we only do have 75 minutes of this webinar. And I want to leave the very end for questions and answers. So once we've moved through all of that, we will talk about the integration piece of magic mushrooms because it can be a little tricky and complicated to integrate. Magic mushrooms tend to be called tricksters for their energy and their way of being. So when it comes to the integration, it can be a little confusing for some people to navigate. And personally, I think with any of the medicines, it can be a little confusing, but I will give some ideas and strategies as to how you can integrate your mushroom journeys and experiences. And even, if you have friends who have moved through their journeys and would like to offer them suggestions or support, this is definitely something that I do recommend. And then towards the very end, we'll talk a little bit about what it means to deepen your relationship with mushrooms, what it means to have a sacred relationship with them, how to honor them, what honoring even means. And then, we'll just kind of close it off. And as I mentioned, open it up for the Q&A. So that is the agenda, the flow of how the webinar will be going. Is anyone have any questions or anything else before I dive in? Okay. Perfect. Okay, so we will go right in. Feel free to drop things into the chat box as well, and feel free to talk amongst each other as well. So we are gonna dive in and talk a little bit about just the historical context. Again, this is from what I've learned. Mushrooms are very unique compared to the other medicines, in my opinion, because they are a medicine that can be grown anywhere and everywhere. Unlike ayahuasca, she's very much jungle medicine. That is where she comes from. Mushrooms, on the other hand, they're literally found everywhere. So there is historical richness and context in Europe, in Siberia, in South America, and in Central America, and in Mexico. So, there's a lot there. For me personally, what I've learned along the way is of the Mazatec tradition, which comes from Mexico. And it's a tradition that stood out to me the most because it does resonate a lot with the traditions that I carry in my own teachings and practices of Shipibo and Cocamea tradition of Peru. And I say that because of the way that they hold ceremony with mushrooms. The Mazatec tradition is commonly or famously known due to the curandera, Maria Sabina. She's an infamous curandera from Oaxaca, Mexico, who held mushroom ceremonies for her community, for healing, for spiritual awakening. And her ceremonies are called veladas. And in essence, these veladas, for me, have been very similar to ayahuasca journeys or ceremonies where you do them at night and explore your inner world and healing with the help of the night. So through her ceremonies, Maria Sabina's ceremonies, she would also chant and sing and work with the energy. Again, very similar to the ayahuasca ceremonies that I'm very much familiar with. So with this tradition in mind, it's also pretty commonly known because a lot of people believe that through the Mazatec tradition and the discovery of Maria Sabina was the reason why in the 1950s psychedelics started kind of being the talk of the town. She was so gifted that word started getting around that there was a Westerner, a foreigner, who wanted to go and travel for seeking her healing, for her guidance. And she allowed him to come into ceremony with him, and he saw the beauty and the transformation of this medicine and of this ceremony. And he basically wrote an article for Life magazine, and it was just the talk of everything at the moment. And more foreigners and Westerners wanted to see what mushrooms was all about. So there's a lot of opinions saying that Maria Sabina and her work, the Mazatec tradition, is what really got people to want to commune with magic mushrooms. And there's also a lot of some controversy around this as well, because there's a lot of indigenous perspectives, especially with the Mazatec tradition, that they felt very much exploited for the work that they did with the mushrooms, and never felt they got full credit for her work. And unfortunately, not many people do know about Maria Sabina. So I highly recommend, if you don't know who she is, or the lineage or the tradition, or how this story unfolded, I really recommend reading into it and being open to learning more about that, and almost using it as a way to show honor and reverence for this practice, especially if you do feel called to commune with magic mushrooms in this ceremonial way, as the Mazatec lineage did. So that's a little bit of the historical context that I'm familiar with, that I know of. And again, highly recommend and encourage you all to learn more about that as well. Does anyone have any questions in regards to that at all? And yes, she is famous. Thank you. Okay, so we are gonna go into what psilocybin is, what magic mushrooms is, and the way, again, that I've been taught, that the way I've personally have communed with them. Yes, at Deep. The link is in one of my blogs, and I'll definitely pop that in. I'll pop in some links at the very end too, just for everyone to explore as well. So with psilocybin, I, again, with my teachings with the plants, with the medicines, I very much feel that these medicines have a spirit, have an energy that to them, have basically are entities that want to help us heal, help us come into union with one another, help us, come back to wholeness, to completeness, and remind us of our power, of our love. And with the work with all the medicines that I've been with, ayahuasca and my master plant teachers, with mushrooms, I've gotten very clear messages that yes, they all have different energies and spirits, but they all have a mission for all of us to come back to source, to love. And they will do that in any way that they can, and will partner up with each other as well, which is why I believe ayahuasca guided me to magic mushrooms, to have me understand from them and learn from them, and know that, again, they're all there to support us on our journey if we open ourselves up in that way. So for me, as I mentioned earlier, magic mushrooms has helped me with my anxiety, with my depression, with body dysmorphia, with eating disorder, really helping me create a safer container within myself of just loving myself more, accepting myself more, staying more present. And there is a lot of scientific research and studies that have shown that magic mushrooms have done so much for so many people with trauma, with PTSD, with anxiety and depression, addiction, alcoholism, ADHD. They've been medicine for a range of different things because of their ability to work really well with our brain. They are known to support and rewire our neural pathways. They have this ability to work with our neuroplasticity in our brain. So the part of our brain that that helps us, or the part of the brain that allows us to identify our thought patterns and our behaviors. So when mushrooms, are communing with us and they work with the brain, they're allowing the neuroplasticity to change. So that's why a lot of people do feel different after being with mushrooms, of their anxiety, reducing, or the depression, it's not as intense anymore. They are healing from it. So it's a big piece of that. And they also work as neurotransmitters in our brain. And they do so by working with the serotonin levels in our brain. So just overall, really powerful medicine. They work for a reason. And another thing to look into as well, if you want to learn more about how exactly on the scientific lens these sacred medicines work with us. The other form that the mushrooms work with us is our psyche, so our inner world, our subconscious mind. And this can be probably one of the most beautiful and challenging parts of working with mushrooms, because when they work with our psyche, they can really unveil some really beautiful things about us. But on the other hand, they also work with the subconscious, which tends to be more of our shadowy parts, the darker parts of ourselves. So we hear a lot of beautiful stories of people, laughing and tripping and seeing awesome colors with mushrooms, which I have had myself. But also on the other hand, for some people, they do take you really deep into your darkness, to have you face your fears with courage. They try to teach us to sit in the discomfort and learn how to be uncomfortable, so that when we are living our everyday life, we know how to just be with ourselves and be human in essence. Because I think a lot of the times people will come to medicines like mushrooms and hope that they will take our pain away or completely fix or change our way of being. But it's the opposite. They want us to embrace and accept everything. And that is sometimes our darkness. That is the parts that we might be ashamed of, the parts of us that make us sad or angry. They want us to know that it's okay for us to feel it all. And in order for us to come into complete wholeness, we have to learn how to embrace it all, be with the duality within ourselves and within the world as well. So when they work in our psyche, it can look many different ways. Sometimes we do get memories that resurface. Our traumas tend to come forward. Fear tends to be a story that the mushrooms love to work with, to have us understand that there really is nothing to be afraid of at the end of the day. And it's a beautiful way that they work with us. Again, it's challenging, but it's challenging because they want us to grow. They want us to learn from it. The other piece that I'm bringing in is the spiritual piece. So magic mushrooms, los niños, they are really known for their ability to bridge the physical realm and the spiritual realm, just like many of our other plant allies as well. But even through my personal experience, through guiding other clients or just hearing friends or loved ones, they do have the ability to connect us to our ancestors, to past loved ones, to our power, to source, to Mother Nature. They have this amazing ability to remind us that we are all connected, that we are all here on Earth. We are all loved by Mother Earth, that Mother Earth is alive, and everything in this earth is alive and has some energy to it. Mushrooms they grow in a colony. So even the fact that the way that they grow and the way that they are represents this idea of being together, of needing to be as a collective, to heal together, move together, and know that, again, we're always connected. So they have this magic to them that reminds us that we're all here, we're all Mother Earth's children in essence. And Sometimes people will feel very much connected to Mother Earth, to Pachamama after ceremony. They'll feel very much connected to Source. Some people claim to connect to God or to feel God. They feel more love. They feel more peace. And again, more connection. I think we're in a time in our lives where there's a lot of separation. So mushrooms and their spirit, their energy, they tend to want us to remind us the importance of coming together, of being together and healing together as a collective. So they definitely can also give us clarity on our spiritual paths as well. So for those who may be on the shamanic path or feel very called to work with more medicines with them, they can give you wisdom and guidance on what that looks like for you. So they're these sacred teachers in essence that really want us to learn from them, that is in alignment for our highest good and our highest good only. So yeah, that's kind of the overall energy and essence of mushrooms. I'm curious to know if any of that resonates with any of you, or if there's anything that you feel like I didn't mention. I'd love to open that up if anyone wants to share. Some comments coming in. Beautiful. Yeah. And two, just to be aware, what I mentioned, it's going to resonate to some, and for other people, it won't resonate 100%. I've been taught that the medicines, whether that's our fungi allies or our plant allies, they will always meet you exactly where you're at and what your energy is. For me, like I mentioned earlier, they definitely bring me into the depths of my subconscious and my darkness and my trauma, and then lead me to love. But on the other hand, there's also a lot of people, including people like my partner, where they just love being super laid back with him. He's never gone through any type of darkness, or it's just, he's very, very similar to the energy of mushrooms. And at first, this triggered me because I'm like, how is it that you're not facing trauma or darkness? I'm over here crying and can't stop. And he's just riding the wave. And I've asked teachers, and they're like, this, sometimes the mushrooms just, that's how they are. And it can be with other medicines too. I hear with ayahuasca, some people have a more gentler time with ayahuasca than they do with mushrooms. I'm kind of one of those people as well. So as you discover your relationship with mushrooms, know too that it will always look different from other people, maybe a little bit similar, but I never want to discourage someone from thinking that their relationship needs to be a certain way. Again, they'll show up for you in the way that you need, not necessarily in the way that you want. And that's the beauty and the magic of mushrooms, is they know exactly how to support you and how they want to work with you. So definitely keeping an open mind on your relationship with them as you continue moving forward with them. Let me see if I missed anything in the chat. Okay, so a lot of resonance. Beautiful. Everybody will hear and see what they need to. Yep, exactly. Cool. So moving on to the next portion is the safety and responsible use of mushrooms. Again, feel free to add things into the chat if you feel like I missed something, or you want to expand on anything or have questions on. That is definitely open. So again, breaking it up just to follow a little bit better, we're going to start with the psychological piece of being safe with mushrooms. So the reason why here at Plant Medicine People, we decided to do this webinar is one, with the psychedelic movement happening now, right now, like a lot of people are talking more and more about psychedelics. Psilocybin is, decriminalized in Colorado and places like Oregon and other places of the world too, that this medicine is just gaining more and more popularity, and that's amazing, and we're really, really excited for this. However, due to demand and popularity, we do have to be mindful of how we commune with them, what safety means. There's a lot of excitement and a lot of eagerness around sitting with mushrooms, but from the perspective of, with plant medicine people, we value safety really, really overall more than anything, and try our best to create what safety means for everyone in their own individual paths. So we just want to make sure that we're creating these safety protocols for everyone to just explore and honor their nervous system, because we also are very much about being trauma informed as well. And we never want anyone to be in a situation with the medicines where they don't feel like their nervous system was fully held, where their trauma wasn't fully seen and heard and held in a compassionate and safe way. So that is really what these protocols will be rooted in. So to go back to the psychological piece of it all, this incorporates the mental and the emotional piece. So when we are ready or considering doing mushrooms, it's really important to be honest with yourself or with your facilitator if you choose to sit in a ceremony or with a guide. The reason why you need honesty is to make sure where you are mentally, if you're mentally prepared to dive very deep into the portals of magic mushrooms. As I said earlier, they have this ability to take us into our subconscious mind, into our darkness, into sometimes our traumas, sometimes traumas that we weren't even aware of. So when we talk about the mental piece of it all, it's, do you feel that you are mentally prepared to sit through darkness, to be uncomfortable, to be exposed to things that maybe you didn't know, or sometimes because of the trickster energy of mushrooms, they may tell you something to trigger something else, and you think it's true, and you're not sure if this is actually your trauma. They can be very, very confusing and tricky in that way. So if you're not mentally prepared for that, it can be a very difficult and challenging integration period. Mentally also even ties into like your mental health history, your medical history. If you have a family history with schizophrenia or bipolar, these are things that need to be said out loud. For one, your guide to know what kind of energy they're possibly working with. And two, if you're going to journey solo, it's probably best to seek out professional help through a doctor or through an experienced guide to see if mushrooms is the right medicine for you. Again, because mushrooms are so popular right now, people think, we can just have them whenever and take it whenever, and it shouldn't be that bad. But if, again, we're not ready for it, it can do more damage than good. Mushrooms aren't necessarily just a walk in the park. So it's just something to be mindful about for your own safety in that way. If you are someone who does have experience with antidepressants or is on antidepressants or medications, this is also very opinion-based. There are people who believe that it's okay to have mushrooms and have SSRIs in your system. However, from personal experience, from what I've seen through clients or have heard stories from clients and my teachers, is that sometimes when we commune with mushrooms, with antidepressants in our system, one, it will either cut the connection or the spirit of the medicine to be able to fully serve you deeply and intimately. When we have that in our system, we're almost not fully trusting the medicine to help us heal what's there. And the other part of SSRIs, they are known to suppress our emotions. With medicine, they want us to feel our emotions. So if we haven't learned to be off of our medications and sit with the discomfort of feeling again, and then we do mushrooms, you're not setting up your nervous system for success. In essence, you're not very well prepared to be able to move through the intensity that the emotions can feel like during a journey. Because as any of the other medicines, they like to amplify what's there. So if we've been numbed and suppressed and all of a sudden we're feeling intensely, it can really dysregulate and disrupt the nervous system. And when we're healing, especially trauma, the best way to navigate this is knowing that with trauma, we don't need any more intensity, especially if you've gone through some very intense experiences. The point with medicine is, how can we honor our journey and know that we can heal in other ways? We don't have to heal with the same energy that already triggered us, that already created the traumatic experience. So again, being very mindful with this piece. And again, with the medications in mind, it is opinion. There have been people who have done mushrooms and say they've been fine, but also I've heard that they just don't get as much of the benefits that they could have. So just something to keep in mind, but always talk to a doctor and a professional if you are on medications, or you know of someone who is, to see what are the right steps, because you also have to be mindful of weaning off. So if you are going to wean off, know and be prepared that you should have a support system with you already, whether that is a therapist and your psychiatrist and your guide. Make sure that you can create that for yourself so that the preparation period isn't as intense. And again, you're creating that sense of safety within yourself so that when you do journey, you feel more grounded, you feel more safe and capable of moving through the intense emotions. Yeah, and then going back to the nervous system, it's just really important to honor that, and knowing that our nervous system always has a window of tolerance. So knowing that in our window of tolerance, you want to stay in it. You never want to go over it or under it, because it can just feel too much. So if you're not able to really gauge where your nervous system is at, I highly recommend seeking guidance and professional help of, like, is my nervous system ready to work with medicine like mushrooms? And again, that just allows your sense of safety to be created. And in a way, you're also honoring yourself and your process. Any questions on that piece? Okay, great. So yes, Joyce, go ahead.
Oh, right, thank you. I'm not Joyce. Joyce is my friend, and she sent the link because I lost your link.
Okay.
I've got a question. That do you know of anybody that's done a lot of plant medicine, and it doesn't really matter what it is, that's gone through a phenomenal amount of trauma, and the medicines seem to activate the physical trauma that has been stored in the body? So sorry, everyone else, but if somebody's been tortured in the past, that energy is coming out of the body.
Yes, it's very common to feel that piece somatically, and that's actually something I'm going to go in a little bit more in the next one.
Okay.
It's very common. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. You're welcome. This is another piece to be very mindful about when we're working with mushrooms, because they can take us again into our traumas, and it can show up somatically. It can show up through the physical body. So this is the second piece of the physical part of being mindful of, is my body feeling safe enough to possibly experience these sensations of my trauma? For me, I've had to deal with a lot of sexual trauma in my plant medicine healing, and I felt a lot of sensations, not visuals or anything like that. But again, if our nervous system and our body is not ready and prepared to go through that, it can be extremely challenging and almost disheartening for the person to understand why the medicine is doing that. A lot of the times I've heard stories where people will get angry at mushrooms or ayahuasca for having them feel that again and not really understand why. And sometimes the facilitator or the guide doesn't even mention or help them have tools of how to navigate that if and when that does happen. It doesn't happen all the time, but it is something to be mindful about. So what is one way that we can create that sense of safety? Again, being honest with yourself, are you comfortable feeling sensation in your body that maybe you weren't aware of? Are you comfortable knowing that sometimes you might feel physical pain in your body during your journey? Are you comfortable feeling sadness or the anxiety, the heart palpitations at times? And if you aren't, then again, maybe it's time to slowly approach mushrooms and see how can you ground in your body, how can you create that sense of safety in your body. And for some people, it's been putting a pause on working with magic mushrooms and going to go see a somatic therapist and moving through somatic experiencing to help them connect to their body. Because if we have gone through trauma, as physical trauma where our body has gone through trauma, we really just want to make sure that our body feels safe again to feel, because the trauma can have us believe that we're not ever safe from our body and can actually help us be disconnected from our body. So we don't want to come into a journey feeling disconnected already, because again, it can be extremely challenging and hard on our nervous system to move through that and understand why that's happening. So working with somatic therapists, working with an experienced guide and facilitator who may have already experienced that and help you move through that. How can you connect with your body? Do you need to physically hug yourself? Are you comfortable hugging yourself? Do you need more massage? Do you need to stretch more? Do you need to ground your feet into the earth and allow the energy of the earth to support you to connect you back into your body? So there's definitely ways to help you move through this, but it's also knowing that this also may take time. It's a practice, especially if you feel like you've been disconnected from your body for many, many years. Going gentle, going cautiously and mindfully is really going to be the best way to create that sense of safety in your body. Did I answer your question? Yeah, okay, great.
Perfectly.
Thank you. So yeah, that is another piece to definitely keep in mind, and knowing that it's your responsibility as you go in a solo journey, or again, if you go seek a guide, of knowing that you have responsibility of keeping yourself safe, and that includes keeping your body safe as well. The next piece is the environmental. So when I mean environmental, I'm talking more about like the setting, the external pieces of creating a safe container for yourself. For some of you who do feel called to connect with mushrooms on your own, again, keeping the psychological in mind, the body in mind. It's also important to know that through this lens, because mushrooms do work with energy, in the shamanic perspective, we believe everything has energy, even your space. So if you're going to journey at home, the easiest and simplest things that you can do to create a safe container for yourself is decluttering your space, getting rid of old energy, and so that you can invite healing and beautiful energy. And in essence, you're creating a portal for these medicines to work in a clear, clean vessel. So that's one way of doing that. But also when we talk about setting, it's also about who you want to invite in your space. If it is a guide or a trip sitter, do you trust them? What is your sense of trust with them? Do you have discernment? Can you really tell that this person really has the best intentions for you? Do they have integrity? Do they have a relationship with the medicine? So when it comes to creating and being responsible for your safety, it is making sure, especially if you're seeking out a facilitator, that you interview them. You are, in essence, opening up your spirit, your vulnerable spirit, to the facilitator. It's not something to be taken lightly. And if your facilitator, one, doesn't have experience holding deep containers, hasn't gone through their own shadows and darkness, and been dragged down with the mushrooms themselves, it usually is harder for a facilitator to hold someone else's darkness. It takes time and training and experience to be able to deeply hold darkness without judgment and shame. People don't need any more shame or judgment, especially if you're healing from something. So vet your facilitator, vet your guide, see if you really feel safe, if you feel like they're trying to convince you or force you to be in their container. Immediately, I would say that's a red flag. Always know that with the mushrooms, even with the mushrooms themselves, when you're in journey, you have the right to say, I don't want to look at this, I don't want to do this. You don't always have to listen to the medicine and the facilitator. And this is something that I learned from Kat. She emphasizes this a lot, of having our sovereignty, knowing that we have full agency of our journey. And if anything or anyone tries to take that from us, that is not creating a safe container. So please keep in mind as you're vetting that, you do have full autonomy. You have the right to say what feels good to you and what doesn't, especially if you're someone who's healing PTSD or really anything else. But that can definitely help create that sense of safety for your journey as well. The next piece is also the medicine itself. So where are your mushrooms coming from? Do you know where they're coming from? What strain is it? There's a lot of different strains, and they keep making new strains as well. So when you're sourcing medicine, even asking the grower, like, what is the strain of this? Like, what do people normally experience? And if they can't really answer, again, I'd suggest maybe not working with that strain, or sourcing from that place or from that person. And then when it comes to your facilitator, they definitely should know what strain they're working from, who they got it from, what is in the medicine, and why they're choosing to work with this strain too. Not every strain is the same. I normally like to recommend Golden Teachers as a strain to start off with when you're discovering your relationship with mushrooms. They tend to be a little bit more gentle in a way. I mean, they've definitely made me go through some stuff, but at the end of the day, they're not as intense on the body. They're really their name. They're golden teachers. They're there to kind of teach you the way, and try to do so ever so mindfully. And then there are other strains like Penis Envy, for example. Penis Envy tends to be a lot more psychedelic. So if you aren't experienced, if you aren't really sure of how to work with mushrooms, I wouldn't recommend working with Penis Envy. However, that's your call, but do know that that strain itself tends to be a little bit heavier, a little bit denser, still beautiful. It does offer a lot more visuals. People do like to claim that. So really it's up to you, but it's also good to be aware of the strain. So do your research, ask questions, don't just grab any strain. And knowing again too with dosage. Let me see, just got a question in. Is there any way to clear out any potential negative energies from mushrooms? Sometimes you can only get. Yeah, I'll get to that. I'll say thank you. That's a good question. I'll make sure I get to that. So before I get to Jose's question, I'm going to finish just the dosage piece. So when it comes to dosage, it's also really important to just be aware what dosage means, and also your facilitator should know dosage as well. With mushrooms, usually a microdose is anything from below 1 gram. And microdosing is usually a really good way to also start your sacred, reverent relationship with mushrooms, especially if you're still trying to get familiar. It can be a little bit challenging because it's a lot more subtle, and the subtleties can trigger people because they're like, I'm not feeling anything, nothing's happening. But that is also part of the magic of mushrooms, is this tricky energy of like, oh, you think we're not working, and then all of a sudden the next day you're crying your eyes out. So you just never know with this medicine. With microdosing, it just creates that like gentle baby step type energy that some of you may need, especially if you feel a little bit fearful or unsure. Microdosing is definitely a good way to start. And know that you can also seek out guidance and support from an experienced guide to help you navigate that container as well, and gently increase your dosage so that you do feel comfortable doing possibly a ceremonial dose. Could you repeat dosage again? Yes. So dosage, I believe you're talking about like the amount. So 1 gram and below is microdose, and then from 1 gram to like 2.5 is usually like a moderate dose. You can start feeling a little bit more of the psychedelic, and then from like 2 to 3.5 is a ceremonial dose. So definitely being mindful of inching your way up if you feel that is the way you need to go. From my personal experience, the first time I ever connected with mushrooms, I did do a ceremonial dose. I will say another piece of safety is coming to the medicine humbly. So I did mushrooms after ayahuasca, and I had a little bit of an ego and thought that I could handle mushrooms. I was like, I do ayahuasca, it's fine. Did my 3.5 solo journey. My partner kind of was trip sitting me, but I was like, I got this. And that is probably the darkest, scariest trip I've ever been on. I learned a lot, but definitely you have to come humbly and know that sometimes you may not be ready for that ceremonial dose. So again, inch your way up if you feel that is the way you might need for your nervous system. So that is that. I have a question from Paul. Paul, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me okay? This is Jessica.
Yeah, hi, Jessica.
So my question is, I have a friend that's a psychologist and he has been growing his own mushrooms, and he's on the real like scientific side of, I guess, the journeys. And he's saying that, well, he said that anything like below 4 is like a recreational dose, and if you're trying to do a therapeutic dose, it's 5. And I just want to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. My thoughts on that. I would not say that is a recreational dose. Anything above 4 to 5 is technically called a hero's dose. And a hero's dose is usually for experienced psychedelic users, mushroom users, where from what I've heard, most of the time people want to do hero's dose to have what's called an ego death. So with your ego death, you will in essence have a sense of letting go of your ego and starting anew, going through really, really intense energy. However, I don't recommend that for anyone who is trying to move through trauma, is trying to heal their trauma, because you're literally going from 0 all the way to 100 really, really quickly. That again could dysregulate your nervous system. Your friend may have more experience with mushrooms, and maybe that's why he believes it's more of a recreational dosage for him. But again, mushrooms and really any other medicine, they work differently for everyone. Again, going back to my partner, he can take 4 grams and it feels like a microdose to him. I take 4 grams and I'm not even on this realm. Like, it's a very different experience. So if you're unsure, and again, have never connected with mushrooms before, I wouldn't suggest jumping all the way over there. I would suggest seeing what your relationship is with mushrooms first, and then gently building yourself up. Because again, they're going to work differently for everyone. I hope that answers your question. Yeah, seeing some people with 1.5 really gets them going. And I'm also very much of 1 gram, and I'm pretty much what feels like a ceremonial dose. So it's just, you never want to fully jump to conclusions with it and compare your journey with other people or what you can handle, because everybody has different chemistry. And it's just, again, it's your relationship to the mushrooms, and how that's going to unfold is really how you choose to interact with them. Yep. And then we have Veronica, she can take 5. So it's very, very different. Difference between. Yeah, so I believe with a recreational and therapeutic, I think they can both be sacred. I think we forget that part of being human is enjoying the laughter and the fun, and knowing that, yes, we can set intentions with mushrooms of like, I just want to have fun. I want to laugh. I want to see colors. Know that that's okay. Mushrooms, again, very different from other plants or other medicines. Ayahuasca is very like, no, we're here to do work, and you better not take me lightly. Mushrooms are like, whatever, like we will help heal you, but also like, let's not take our healing journey so seriously. And this is another piece of why I love mushrooms so much, and I believe have helped with my depression and anxiety, is because they didn't have me, heal, focus on your depression, focus on your anxiety. They're like, no, laugh at yourself. You're sad about something that you shouldn't be sad about. And they bring that lightheartedness, they bring that playfulness. So know too that having fun can be sacred as well. Thank you for that question. I wanted to go back to Jose's question. Let me see, where was it? Yeah, so is there a way to clear out potential negative energies from mushrooms? So there is, Jose. So that is definitely definitely a shamanic perspective and way of doing it. Sometimes it does take practice, especially if you're not too clear on what your shamanic gifts are. But from me, I've used a lot of mapacho, so tobacco, sacred tobacco, to clear negative energy. I'll blow over the mushrooms and pray over them. I'll sing to them. Singing can be a really great way to also rewire the energy of the mushroom spirit, or where you may have gotten your mushrooms. So there's definitely a way of doing that. I also like to give an offering to them, either on my altar and to the earth, to help clear that energy out as well. So there's definitely some tools that you can do for that. Yeah, and there's a lot of research too. So definitely, again, for my recommendation is just my opinion, personal experience, and again, the way that I've been guided. But there's nothing wrong with starting small, seeing how you can build and grow from that. So I want to jump forward and talk about the spiritual side, and kind of already mentioned it with Jose's question. You want to make sure that spiritually, mushrooms are going to open up ourselves to that spiritual side of us that we all have. It's going to look different for everyone, but know that the more that we can honor the spiritual side of mushrooms, we can tap into our power and our spiritual gifts as well. As I mentioned earlier, they have an incredible gift of connecting us to our roots and our ancestry, our lineage, and that in itself can be super powerful. You want to make sure that when you're working with mushrooms to create safety spiritually, again, you're working with energy, you're working with portals, you're opening yourself up to other energies, that you really need to have a solid container, a protective container. And what I mean by that is, setting the room up with prayer or talking with music, clearing the space to have a clean, clear vessel for healing and divine energy to flow through. Because energy, with mushrooms, they can really open up a lot of darkness, and then you can invite other type of energy that isn't really going to serve you. So it's important to know, do you have enough spiritual tools to help you navigate a safe spiritual space? And again, sacred tobacco is a great ally. Cleansing your space, smudging it with rosemary or lavender, juniper. I don't like to recommend sage or palo santo too much, because they are plants that are unfortunately being overused and also exploited. But if you do have them, know it's okay to use them. Obviously, thank the plants that you do call in to help when you do smudge. So if you do use tobacco or mapacho, thanking mapacho for helping you clear your space. You can use instruments, you can use song, you can sing to, again, help clear that space for you. You can wear protective jewelry or crystals. So there's definitely ways to help that spiritual safety as well. Having a good spiritual hygiene is what I like to call it. So that's a little bit on that. Any questions on the spiritual side of it? Rose water, agua de Florida, also really, really good. Thank you, Mary. I have a question of what do you recommend if you're feeling overwhelmed during the journey? So this kind of ties into what I said earlier of like keeping in mind of your psychological and physical. If you feel like you're not solid in that before coming into ceremony, practice that. Have your grounding tools really implemented within you, embodied, so that when you do, and if you do go into your journey and you do feel that overwhelm and it's intense, you at least know you have your tools. Again, that creates that sense of safety within yourself to know, okay, I might be feeling overwhelmed, but at least I have my tools. And it can be even physical objects as well as the agua de Florida, the rose water, crystals, grounding crystals, and obviously using your breath as well. Your breath is going to be your biggest support and ally in your journey. And the mushrooms will also remind you to use your breath as well. I'm going to keep going and then I'll come back to the questions. The last piece of safety too is also knowing the legality of mushroom usage and growing. And if that is an important piece for you that helps you feel safe, do your research, know what's legal, what's illegal. In the US, federally, mushrooms are illegal, so keep that in mind. Places like where I'm at currently in Colorado, it is decriminalized. So, you know, we won't get prosecuted for using mushrooms, but again, at a federal level, they still are illegal. So, you know, making sure that you're aware of that. Again, if that is an important piece for you, highly, highly recommend your research. I will plug in some links here at the end too to know exactly what that is and what that means. And then the last piece, or the next piece that I'm gonna talk about, is the integration piece. So integration with magic mushrooms, again, it varies for everyone. Everyone's integration period is always gonna look different, and that goes with any of the other medicines. Magic mushrooms are very, again, that trickster energy. Sometimes they're going to give you messages or visuals that might be a message and they really aren't a message for you. So with any integration period, take it slow. Take it slow to really allow yourself to process and see what the messages could have been. Sometimes, because of the childlike nature of los niños, of mushrooms, they'll honestly show you nonsense. And honestly, you don't need to make sense of the nonsense. Be open to just having fun, laughing at it. It doesn't always have to be anything deep or personal. Sometimes it is just to kind of add that lightheartedness that they do. And if they do that, it could be an invitation for you of how can I invite more lightheartedness into my life. But to help with the overall integration period, my biggest strategy that I use for myself and for my clients is also breaking it up into 4 categories. So we have the mental, the emotional, spiritual, and the physical, physical being the body again. And really reflecting when you're sitting with mushrooms and you've gone through your journey, you're in your integration period, asking yourself, how did the mental come up for me? How did the emotional come up for me? How did the spiritual come up for me? And how did the physical come up for me? If you were in your journey and you felt physically a lot of sensation, maybe you felt back pain, maybe you felt pain in your neck or in your womb space, trust that the medicine was helping you clear and heal that energy. But again, mushrooms, all the other medicines, they're not here to heal us. They're here to remind us that we have our own self-healing abilities. So what they're trying to show us is, hey, there's some energy here, there's maybe some pain here that needs some help, and we're going to help you. However, it is still your responsibility to continue this work. The work doesn't end. So if, let's say, you do have back pain, do you need to support your back more on an everyday basis? Do you need more stretching? Do you need to go get a massage? Do you need to see a chiropractor, to again help with the healing of your body? It takes time. For me, I suffered a lot of back pain in my journeys, and I wasn't doing anything about it. And I was like, why am I continuously feeling my back pain? This should be done. I already felt it in my last ceremony. What is going on? And they made it very clear, like, you're not doing integration. Like, we can't keep helping you. We can't try to save you. Like, you're not doing any of the work. So of course you're going to keep feeling the back pain. So I had to strengthen my back. I actually had to go to the gym and lift some weights to make my back feel stronger. And since then, I haven't had back pain come up in ceremony. So it's really important, again, reflecting what came up in ceremony or in your journey, and then seeing how you can support that in your integration. With the mental piece, sometimes people feel like they're constantly in their thoughts. It's ongoing, it doesn't stop. That's usually a good sign that you might tend to be an overthinker. So trust that in the ceremony, it's a way of purging, cleansing the thoughts, cleansing the mind. But you also may need an outlet during your integration of continuously letting out your thoughts. Do you need to have talk therapy? Do you need to journal? What are ways that you can honor the thoughts to come up so that you can have a clear-headed mind? The emotional, a lot of times people cry a lot, feel a lot. Again, that is your invitation during your integration period to continue crying if you need to, especially if you suppress your emotions for so many years. Now it's your opportunity to learn how to cry and be with your emotions. Know that when we're feeling down or sad after or during our integration, it's not that we haven't learned anything or we've fallen back. It's just, again, that invitation of being human, of accepting ourselves as human, of feeling and knowing it's okay. And we're sad and we have to let it go. So honor your emotions that come up. And it could be a range of different emotions: anger, rage, happiness, all the things. Just allow yourself to be in that. The spiritual side of integration kind of goes back to connecting to your ancestors, your guides, to nature, through meditation, really emphasizing that spiritual work outside of ceremony can really help your integration and your connection to mushrooms as well. So this is part of what it means to create a sacred and reverent relationship with the mushrooms, is knowing that we don't always have to consume mushrooms to be able to communicate with them. It's a practice, it takes time. But if we see them as a spirit and see them as a sacred teacher and an ally that's with us moving forward, we can continue talking to them, feeling them in our body, calling them into our hearts. If we feel blocked, if we feel like we aren't seeing clearly or struggling in our integration, it's really important to know that we have those tools, and they like to connect to us even when we're not ingesting them. So know that that's a possibility too, as a way to integrate your connection, but also the spiritual side of communing with mushrooms. So that is my most simplest way that I can talk about integration. There's definitely a lot more. And I'm happy to, talking to you all more one-on-one or via email if you do have more questions regarding the integration of mushrooms. We'll probably do another webinar that focuses more on integration. So definitely stay tuned for that. But are there any questions in regards to integration? So I have a question here. What do you recommend for the integration if there has been a nervous system reset during the journey? So this one's good. This tends to be a common theme that happens during integration of your nervous system reset. And the biggest, most simplest one that I like to encourage people is, even before you go into your journey, make sure that you have support system coming out. So you have a therapist that you can go to, you can have an integration coach that you go to help you really get clear on what exactly was resetting within your nervous system. How can we continue supporting your nervous system? Does your nervous system need more safety? Does it need more love, more compassion? And really getting clear on how can we create that. It's going to be different for everyone, different obviously because of different experiences. But with nervous system resetting, it's also a big sign of slowing down. So slow down as much as you can. Try not to move too quickly in decision making, but also just the pace of your life. Our nervous systems heal in slowness, not by quickness, not by moving fast. So that's definitely one simple way to do that. Personally, I love to be by water too, as a way to just kind of be in the present, allowing the energy of water to cleanse and continue replenishing my nervous system. How do you recommend to integrate a ceremony where the mushroom did not open anything? You felt the intoxication, but did not see, felt, or received anything. Yeah, so this is another way of having an experience with mushrooms. Sometimes I get people who really don't feel too much and don't see anything, and then they're disappointed or let down. And sometimes it's just needing to surrender to that. I know it can even be a very triggering answer for some people, but it's just the idea that sometimes you're not ready to go deep yet. And it's trusting the mushrooms, the medicine, and knowing that their intelligence or consciousness knows exactly what you need in that moment, not necessarily what you want. When you feel like you didn't see anything or feel anything, sometimes it is a matter of fact of questioning, well, did I really trust myself through this process? Did I really trust the medicine? Did I try to control anything? And this can happen with medicine like ayahuasca as well, where we try to control our journey too much. And then she's like, nope, I'm not going to give you anything. And mushrooms can kind of do the same thing because they want us to let go and to trust in them. If we don't, then it's also like, well, we can't force her to trust or you to trust. So usually it will kind of be very mild to like no real big journey. But with that, if we can shift our perspective and see that as medicine, see that as a teaching, we can learn from that and see that, okay, it's not that I didn't receive anything, but what I did receive is maybe I do need to work on my trust, and how can I work with this and open myself up more to let go of control if that is what is happening. So I hope that helps a little bit. Gonna see if there's any other question. Did get what dose would you use as a facilitator in ceremony? This also is very dependent on if you're facilitating. Again, you need to check in with people's nervous systems and where they're at. Again, the way that I've been taught, don't give them too much. Not a lot of medicine isn't always the answer for them. Sometimes people really need to ride the wave a little bit more gently and still experience a lot. Sometimes they need time to build that trust. So really it just depends on how you intake people, where you're feeling them, trusting the medicine to also guide you into dosage. Dosage, again, it can just be anywhere from like 1.8 to 3.5 grams for that ceremonial dose. But again, for me, at 1 gram, I do feel a pretty big ceremonial dose. So it's like, you have to be very mindful of people's energies and trusting that we know where their nervous system's at, what they can handle, what their sensitivity is. So that is that. I hope that answered your question. Okay. And then the last thing that I'm going to briefly touch on is kind of what I've been saying throughout the webinar, but it is about continuing creating a sacred relationship with mushrooms. Again, they're getting really, really popular. So with popularity and demand, the roots of the sacredness of this medicine can start to get a little foggy. They get lost. So it's important for us as a community to, again, learn about the roots of your ancestral roots. Did your ancestors use mushrooms? How did they? Sometimes it can be hard to find that. Sometimes people need to go to their homeland and kind of trust in the energy of their homeland or where their ancestors come from, of figuring that message out. That's what I had to do for myself. And it helped a lot. and just acknowledging that these ceremonies and rituals and the ways of communing with mushrooms in a sacred way aren't anything new. It's nothing new age at all. So it's up to us to acknowledge indigenous traditions and teachings, even if we're not very clear on what that is, at least express that, show that reverence, show that respect. Again, for me, it is the Mazatec tradition. So I show my honor, I acknowledge. The way that I commune with mushrooms is very much Mazatec tradition based. I even call in Maria Sabina when I'm working with mushrooms. I try to honor her. I try to learn more. I try to learn from more of family or friends that feel like family who are of Mexican descent and get their perspectives, learn and be open to learning. That is the deepest way that we can respect the medicine and its roots, and being open to that. Again, another way that we can continue creating a sacred relationship with the medicine is by connecting with them outside of ceremony, using that as a practice to know that we don't always have to have more and more medicine to nourish our relationship with them. We can speak to them, pray to them. We can invite them in our meditations when we're journeying with just listening to music. They'll always be there. So I definitely recommend discovering what that looks like to you, how you feel them without needing to consume them all the time. And you also can strengthen your trust with them and your own ability to connect spiritually as well. So show your gratitude, show your reverence for the medicine and what they do, what they've done for the collective, what they've done for your friends, your family, for your healing journey, and see how you can offer anything to them, whether that's doing more for Mother Earth, offering things to Mother Earth like tobacco or plants or whatever it is that feels good to you. Do that, and they love that. The more respect that we can show to them, the more respect they show us too on our journeys moving forward. So that is all that I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for listening. I do want to open it up for a few minutes of Q&A if there are more questions, but we are towards the end. If some of you need to hop off, totally understand, but I'll probably stay on for like another 5 minutes. So thank you so much. Hi, Karma. Good to see you. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much. Thank you, Will. Thank you so much. Such an honor to be here. Thank you, Liz. Thank you. It was an honor to share my teachings with you all. Thank you. I have a question from Jenny. What would you say about a person who seems to need high doses to have an effect? Again, kind of going back to people just having different chemistry in their body, and energy as well. Again, my partner needs higher doses to really feel the medicine. I think it's really more of like a biological thing. Just some people really have a hard time metabolizing psilocybin as well, so that can also be the case. But nothing, I wouldn't say it's anything energetic or spiritual that's interfering with that. Yes, Dana, I do have a contact email. So we're going to send a thank you email, and it should be there. But I also will just plug it in here as well. It's going to be Natalhie@plantmedicinepeople.com. And that is one way you can talk to me. Also, as a thank you to everyone who joined this webinar, I am offering 15% off of my coaching services, whether that's 30 minutes, 60 minutes, or a 4-pack. The 4-pack is already discounted, but we're doing an additional 15. So highly recommend if you're looking for preparation support, integration support, or just want to chat more about medicine or your journey. If you're on the medicine path, I'm happy to connect. So thank you. Awesome. Beautiful. Well, if there are no more questions, I'm going to just end it here then. Thank you so much, everyone. It was a pleasure to have you. Super grateful. And I hope to see some of you in future webinars or one-on-one. Jade, I am on Instagram. My Instagram is at soul, S-O-L, .alignment. I'll type that in too. I'm happy to connect there. And yes, I will also send the links in the email since, yeah. Thank you, Judith. Let me make a note of that. Perfect. Thank you, Judith. Thank you, everyone. Have a good one. Take care. Bye-bye.